Okay, this is Mariam. She's my eldest daughter. All three of my kids were homeschooled and did amazingly well in their academic studies. Mariam's currently at Oxford. She finished her A-levels when she was 13. The other kids have kind of like, my youngest daughter is waiting to go to Cambridge. My son did his physics A-level, for example, at the age of 10, where he got an A in that. So all kids have done amazingly well in their studies, and all were homeschooled. And I posted quite a few videos already, and a lot of people ask me, I can see in the comments, and a lot of people ask me generally, how do we do it? And we kind of made a video about that, but I'm seeing in the video that I posted, people asking, like, can you give a blueprint? What do I do with my 13-year-old child? And I thought I'd use the time that I have with Mariam to let her give her take on how parents who are kind of like a bit lost on how to actually approach it, how they should, what advice you would give, being the subject of having been homeschooled for so many years. Go for it.
Okay, so I think kind of the whole point of our videos is like you don't need a blueprint. Like we're just kind of trying to prove how easy it is to do the whole thing, because my parents they were familiar with the GCSE and UK A-level system, or well, at least my dad had sat GCSEs and A-levels, so he kind of had an idea of what the exams are like, but in terms of actually he's not like a teacher, neither is my mother, so we kind of figured out how to do everything, or they figured out how to do everything from scratch, and it's not very difficult to do. And there comes a certain age where the child can actually do everything themselves, when it comes to teaching themselves, not just teaching themselves, but figuring out the whole system, what to teach themselves in order to sit the exam. So everything you can do, I'm going to give a general overview of where to start, but it will just be a very general overview, because really the whole point is you can figure everything out yourself just by looking at the syllabus. So I think probably the best way to do it is to give two very contrasting examples of this. So the first one would be maths A-level, and how we did that, or maths GCSE. I
think start with GCSE, yeah.
Yeah, but GCSE and A-level is just the same exam at different levels. The way you do it is the same, basically. So I'll talk about maths. The important thing is the subject. That differs a lot, how you do one subject to another. So first I'll talk about maths. Exams in general, and then I'll talk about something like languages, which I've done. I know a lot of people languages is not something that many people do, but it's a good example because it's something that doesn't have any structure. There's no book you can read. For maths there are textbooks with the exams. For languages there are no textbooks. There's no guidance on how what level you need to be at, because it's very you just need to be at a good level at the language. So it's very difficult to kind of know exactly where you need to be at the language. But I've done Arabic and French A-levels, and I did them myself without any. Well, for French I had my mom helping me, but for Arabic I didn't really have any tutoring. Had a little bit of tutoring, just to mark my essays and stuff, but none for the actual system of where I need to be and things like that. So for maths, that's quite structured. So basically what we did is we started with Khan Academy, which is a free website that teaches you video subjects, and it does it by grade. So if your kid is currently at second grade level, you can, I have no idea what age that was. That is because I was homeschooled. But let's just say that at second grade level, you can start from second grade in Khan Academy and then quickly progress much quicker than at school. And they will understand it very well, because the video, there's a video there explaining the topic. They can obviously rewind and rewatch whatever they need to, and whatever they understand easily, they can just move on quickly. So they go pretty quickly, especially if you're just doing maths. It's better to focus one or two subjects at a time, which we've talked about in other videos. So they can start there, and then they can keep doing Khan Academy. And Khan Academy, asks you questions and stuff to make sure that you're understanding properly, and make sure you are that you remember things you've learned before. So you want to be doing that until basically the GCSE or the exam level. And then once you get to the pre-exam level, so usually people start studying their GCSEs aged 14. So you would do Khan Academy until whatever grade aged 14 people are in. And then from there you can start doing the actual syllabus. So once you get to the syllabus, all you do is, first of all you have to pick the board. So there are different GCSEs, there are different boards for you to do your GCSEs with. or your A levels with. So the two that I know or that I'm familiar with, because I've done both of them, are Cambridge and Edexcel. So basically, just search it up. Like look up Pearson Edexcel. They have a website. Look up Cambridge CIE. Obviously, don't go to the University of Cambridge website. You might accidentally go there. Just search like CIE Cambridge or something like that. You'll come up to the website for Cambridge board exams. So both of these have both GCSEs and A levels. And then there are also there's like AQA, there's probably a couple of others. I'm not really familiar with the other boards, but that's the first thing is you want to choose a board. The boards are pretty much equal. Like it's just like there's not, you could say some of them are more difficult than others, but then usually the grade boundaries will be lower, meaning it's easier. Like if, let's say Cambridge is harder than Edexcel, like the papers might look harder, but then actually for Edexcel you need 80% to get an A star, and Cambridge you only need 75% to get an A star. So it ends up balancing out basically, that's my point. So generally the difficulty level is not really a good indicator, but at the same time I generally prefer Edexcel just because it's easier in terms of like, I mean, I do think from my experience it's been easier, even if the grade boundaries are higher, I just prefer it to be easier. And also, it's kind of like just the layout of the papers is more comfortable. Like I don't like sitting a Cambridge paper. I just don't like how the paper looks. Like that's actually, when I'm thinking of like which board to do, I actually have that in mind. Like I don't like the Cambridge papers, so I will avoid Cambridge. Literally for that reason. But do some research about like when the exams are available. So for example, Edexcel might have only papers in June, whereas your child might be more like they look like they're going to be ready around October, November. And maybe Cambridge has a paper in October, November. So why would you wait all the way to June when your child can do the paper in October/November? So that's one thing to keep in mind, and you do have to book the exams quite early, otherwise they get like very expensive. So that's another thing to consider. You can book the exams either with at a kind of center, like the British Council will have centers. So if you go to the British Council website, you can find like how to sit an exam, and you can see if there are British Council centers in your country. So this is if you're not if you're outside of the UK, because GCSEs and A levels are British exams. So you can sit them with the British Council. You can also sit them with the school. So you can try and look up if any international, like UK schools, or if you're in the UK, then any school will probably be sitting GCSEs and A levels. And you can ask the school, can my child sit an exam at your school as a private candidate, and how much would it cost and whatever. So, and in some cases, like depending on your country, it could be a very, very low cost. It could even be free. I don't think it would be free. It would be free. But it could be at a very low cost. Or it can be very expensive. So that's something to look into. But just so you know, the actual studying will be very cheap. Like, you know, to actually get to the GCSE, to actually get your child ready for the exams, that will not cost a lot of money because you're basically using free online materials most of the time. So that's for booking the exam. I assume he's coming to say something. No, okay. So that's for booking the exam. So basically just, you know, look up how to do that online. You can find like the best where you want to book your exam and which board you want to do. After that, you've got the actual studying for the exam. Well, actually, you have to start studying before you book it.
So can I just interrupt there?
Yeah.
So very quickly, I think the easiest thing to do for someone, I think the easiest thing to do is just to go for, if your kid's like pre-13, is probably just to go for the GCSE maths and just do that, focus on that subject. Relatively easy to kind of learn. There's a lot of material out there, and if you have that focus, and you I think if your child does that well and studies by themselves and does well, then you're kind of like, you're going to have that confidence. Wow, my child outside the system just got that, hopefully A star. And that's going to give a huge amount of confidence. That's how it started with us. So if you're trying to like simplify this, you're going into quite a lot of detail. But I'd say that, look, just start with that. Start with, and you could, I think, remember our kids did their GCSEs maths when they were like 7 or 8 or latest 9. Yeah.
8. So my sister did it at 8, and then I did it, I think, 11.
And Daniel did it at 9, but he did his. Whatever. Okay, so what I'm saying is you can start going for that really early, and if you just do that, I think that will be a real shock to you. That, hold on a minute, my child was supposed to do that at 16 at school, They've just done it, and it's not that difficult. So if they just do that, and I think, sorry, just I'll let you speak in a second, gives you a bit of time to think. The other thing is, I think the most important thing, you're going through a lot of details, right? I think the most important thing, and I think you've got to ask yourself this question, is the parent, and that's the parent plays a huge role.
Yeah.
Thanks. So the parent plays a significant role. The parents play a significant role, but they've got to be involved. And I think the exams that you've done most well in is where you've, for the most part, your parents have been most involved, and the ones that you've struggled with, I think, more have been where your parents have been less involved. But the other thing is, does the child actually want to do this? Because ultimately, I would say an 11-year-old who's literate and can kind of like use the internet and whatever should easily, if they really wanted to be able to, they should easily be able to get a GCSE maths grade by themselves. They can do all of this by themselves. So one little thing I can tell you about all our kids is now, if I said to Mariam or Sabine, who's 16, or Sabine when she was 12, and I'm not exaggerating here, I said to Sabine, look, Sabine, can you just do a degree? It's not a degree. Can you do an A-level in law, right? She would know, and you would know exactly what to do. It wouldn't be me saying, okay, Mariam, here's your classes. I want you to know. You would hire your own teachers. They would hire their own teachers. They know how to do that as well. So what I'm saying is, if a child ultimately really wants to do this, they can do this.
And the way to make them want to do it is by explaining to them what they're doing. So when we were doing our GCSEs and A-levels, we knew, like, the whole plan generally, not so much when we started, but gradually the plan became that, okay, you guys are going to finish with your education aged whatever it is. For me, it was 13. But for my brother, for example, it was 11. And you're not going to have to do any exams after that. So most people, they would explain to us, most people do these exams at 16, 18, go to university. And for us, they were like, no, you're just going to finish all of that education by 11, 13, whatever it is. After that, if you want to go to university, sure. But the idea was we were going to go into business after that. But that's another story. We're not going to go into all of that right now. So you kind of want to explain to them that general plan so they can and get them on board with that. They have to agree with that and agree that, because they're not going to like the actual studying. Like, we did not enjoy studying. I hated maths. So it's just that I had that general goal in mind. I had the exam in mind as well. Like, when you have that kind of more short-term goal of the exam, it's coming up in like 4 months. And there's not too much pressure, because you know that if you fail the exam, just take it again. Like, it's not a big deal. You're like, 10 years old? You can take the exam at 11. It's not a big deal. So I think that's the best way to like really get them on board with it. And how much they take on, like how much of the responsibility for the exam that they take on, depends on their age and if they've done these exams in the past, if they know the system, and also their maturity and those kind of things. So as the parent, you want to kind of be overseeing everything. You need to have a general idea of what's going on. You need to, but at the beginning, for example, you need to do all of this research yourself. You can't expect your child to find, they don't even know what a board is for a GCSE. So you would need to do this yourself for the first time, especially if they're younger, and kind of get them onto, like for Maths, Khan Academy. After Khan Academy, you'd go into past papers. So basically, you'd go into the textbooks. So they can start learning from the textbooks. And the thing is, textbooks are kind of difficult to understand. So I don't say that they just sit there and read the textbook. No, just look at the topic of the textbook. Like the topic says, let's say, whatever, fractions, and then go to YouTube and look up GCSE fractions and look at like 6 different videos explaining GCSE fractions, and then you have a good idea. And the child can do this themselves. Just tell them this topic, go and search it up, understand it, come back to me when you've understood it.
You're saying textbooks are too boring.
Yeah, like nobody, and kids don't understand. A 10-year-old is not going to read a textbook and understand it. They're going to understand when they watch someone explain it and give examples. So the textbook should just be more of a guide, because the textbook has everything you need to know. So they should read the textbook, but I think the best way is probably go to the videos, get a general understanding of the topic, then read the textbook. Something like that. Obviously, you can, adjust this to whatever works for you. But that's like something you can, kind of start with. And then after that, you go into the past papers. So basically, for all the GCSEs and A-levels, you can find online all the papers from previous years, like the real papers that people have sat from previous years, as well as specimen, like sample type papers, just so they can show you like what the paper's supposed to look like. And you can use those to practice. So basically, once you're done with the book, or while you're doing the book, because the GCSE is split up into 2 years. So once you're done with the first year, let's say the foundation year, you can move on to the second year book. While you're doing the second year books, you can start with the first year past papers, foundation past papers, something like that. So past papers are really, really important because that's where you're actually applying everything you've learned. If you don't do the past papers, you're not ready for the exam. Like, you're not even close. The past papers is where the actual exam preparation starts, actually. So you should start doing that as early as you possibly can. So look for the past papers. At first, it will take the kid a really long time to do them. They might take a whole day. Give them access to the internet, to their books, to look things up, because they're not going to be able to remember everything when they're sitting the exam. They might get a rubbish score, like 30%. That's fine. Just keep practicing with the past papers, and they will improve really, really quickly. They might have forgotten some of the earlier topics a little bit.
What if the parent can't help here? Is not a so your example might be Arabic.
Yeah. So if the parent can't help with the actual subject, let's say you can't do GCSE maths, and your child is studying for GCSE maths. Now, the main studying they're doing is via the textbook and YouTube, so that part is fine, but they'll get stuck a lot of the time. First of all, the first thing to do is not to baby them. If they start getting stuck, just tell them, no, figure it out. Like, just look up another, if you don't understand that video, look up another video. There'll be a video explaining it,
Was that me being lazy, you think?
I think it was, okay, so this is what he did with us, by the way. We'd come to him with a question, and he'd just be like, working on his laptop, and he wouldn't even look up. He'd just be like, yeah, just figure it out. Just figure it out. And we just have to figure it out. But there will be points. But it's a very
important thing. You are motivated. That's a very important thing. Yeah. So remember, that she's coming, and Daniela, my son, is coming, and Sabine as well. They're asking me. They're coming to me. So that's, if that's not happening, it's not going to work. That's the first thing. But okay, so you're coming. Yeah.
So I don't think he was being lazy. I think
I was being lazy. I was busy. I was running a business, right?
So he wasn't lazy, but he was busy. But it ended up working out for him, because turns out, like, just kind of letting your child do it themselves is a good idea, and they figure it out more quickly, or maybe not more quickly, but more effectively that way, and they understand the topic deeper. But there will be questions that they can't do. There will be topics they just cannot understand. So for that, you can book a tutor for, let's say, 1 hour a week. You just have a time, like, let's say end of the week, for 1 hour, your child and this online tutor will just have a call for, like, just for your child to ask them any questions.
Ask those specific questions that they wanted to ask.
They have to be really specific, like, I don't understand on this past paper, question 3 part A, why is it this and not this? Something like that. Or here's my working, I don't understand.
And how do you get a tutor? And if you're asking how do you get a tutor, really Homeschool is not for you.
Just search up tutor sites.
You should be able to get a tutor. Yeah. If you can't get a tutor, honestly, like, forget it. Because everything is like, you're going to have to learn things and do things. And if you're kind of like, how do I get a tutor?
Basically, the point is, if you don't know how to do something, just Google it. Like, just how to this, and then you'll find your answer. That's like the key. So,
So online tutor, typically,
it shouldn't be too expensive. Like, you can get someone from a country where, like, they're getting paid less because the currency is different. So in some countries, people would be happy with, let's say, $7-8 an hour or something like that.
And they don't have to be teachers.
Yeah, they don't have to be. If they've done, students. Let's say, like someone studying maths in university, for example, so they wouldn't be charging much. So if you can't afford, like, a really high quality teacher, that's fine. Just like anyone who will be able to explain these questions.
So in the end, Sabine was getting a physics professor from, I can't remember, from Eastern Europe, a professor in physics, helping her in her A-level physics personally. And she didn't use him for many hours, but...
So you didn't end up paying that much? Because...
No, it was like, I can't remember, it was like $25 an hour or something like that. Even less than that,
because she would only ask him when she needed his help. It wouldn't be like a weekly thing. It would just be like, okay, now I need an hour session. And she'd have a bunch of questions she'd gathered over, like, a really long time.
And she'd send them in advance as well.
Yeah. So he could look at them. So that's basically how you do a maths GCSE. That's it. Like, then you just keep doing the past papers until you get quicker and quicker at them, and then you have to do them in timed, not just timed, but in exam conditions, which means your kid goes into a room by themselves. My dad would be so obsessive with this. He'd be like, okay, the AC has to be on to how they put them on in the exam rooms. Like, it has to be a bit cold, because we would say, like, the exam rooms are a bit cold. So he'd be like, okay, we have to make it a bit cold. Everyone in the whole house has to be, like, dead silent. It has to be like you're actually sitting the exam.
To put a bit of pressure on as well.
Yeah, and to just prepare, like, mentally. And also just so, because you don't know, like, if they're sitting the actual exam, they might do better or worse because of those like specific pressures you have in the exam. So you're kind of preparing them for that and seeing how will they do in an actual exam. And then they have, like, let's say the paper is a 1.5 hour paper, they only have 1.5 hour papers. If it's an exam without calculator, you're not allowed a calculator, no devices in the room. They just sit there and do the paper for 1.5 hours. You don't have to do this, like, you just need to do this maybe like 5-6 times at most. Otherwise, try to do them timed towards the end. Timed means you are doing it within the 1.5 hours, but it could be like at a cafe or something. Like, it doesn't have to be exam conditions. So you have different, ways of doing it, but just make sure you're practicing as much as possible. And here's a really important thing: your child should mark the paper themselves, which sounds really difficult. Like, how can a 9-year-old be marking their own papers? Just look up the mark scheme. The papers all come with their own mark schemes. The answers are there, and the working out is there. It tells you the different steps, and it tells you also the mark scheme has its own system that you have to understand. So, for example, there might be a 5-mark question. Your child puts down the right answer, but they didn't put down any working. They will get a 0 for that, because you have to put down your working for something like a 5-mark question. Otherwise,
Not a 0. Oh,
no, they'd get a 0.
Really? Okay.
So most questions, you'd get a 0 because you've just put down the answer and you haven't showed.
They assume you've guessed it.
Yeah, they assumed you've guessed it, or you've like cheated or something, like, because your working is not there. So you would get a 0. So now you have to understand how the mark scheme works. You have to understand that, for example, if it's an A1, that means it depends on, I'm making this up because I don't remember what it was like, but I remember there would be like A1, M1, something like that. A1 means the 1 mark depends on the working previously, whereas M1 means if they just put down the answer, they don't need the working, something like that. And there's a guide. It's not like people go through some...
For each board, there's a different guide.
There's a guide in the mark scheme. Like, just open the mark scheme. The first page will say A1 means this, M1 means this. I was like 10 years old figuring this out on my own. So your child can do it. Just read the mark scheme and they will understand how to mark their own papers. Or maybe you were helping me in the beginning. I don't remember.
No, at the beginning, there's a lot of help for sure. At the beginning, there's a lot of help. And then the other thing I'd just say is that you do need to make sure, this is a mistake we made in the A-levels, you need to make sure that once in a while you mark the paper or get it independently marked. That's what we've done as well. So you get it independently marked. You can just hire a teacher and say, can you mark this paper? I mean, that's the easy way to do it. You just send it over and get it marked. That's probably a better way once in a while just to do that.
And maybe ask them to show in the mark scheme how they've marked it, because some people will just change the score a bit to appease you, basically. Like, they'll underestimate the score just because they don't want to get your hopes up or something like that. So you have to be careful about that as well. And then after that, but something like maths, by the way, is very black and white. There's no it's not something like a language where it's like, generally your French is good, so we're going to put you in this band. That's literally how they decide it. There's no real stuff you can do for tangible ways you can know what marks to give for some subjects, but maths is very black and white.
Have you explained how you did Arabic then?
No, so I'm going to go into that.
Okay.
So for Arabic A-level, this I did when I was 18. So by that time, I'm basically an adult. No, I was 18. So I could do that on my own. And I needed to do it on my own because no one in my family speaks Arabic. So they were not able to help with this. And for most of the A-levels I had done before this, I did get some kind of help. So for example, when I was doing maths, physics, whatever, my dad studied physics in university, so he was able to help with that. When I was doing French, my mom is French, she helped with that. She helped a lot with accounting and biology. She's an accountant, and for biology, she actually studied it with me. Like, she studied the book with me to help me do it. And then for my my dad mentioned that I did my A-levels when I was 13. I did 3 at 13, and then I did 3 more, or I resat 1 and did 2 more at 17, 18, because at that point I decided I didn't want to go into business and I wanted to go to university. For the Arabic A-level, I already had a good level of Arabic in some ways. So I had never sat the GCSE before, but I had just been studying Arabic on my own because I was kind of obsessed with Arabic. So I had never really written an essay before in Arabic, or really written much, but I could read it very easily. I could read things. What I did was I went online, I searched up the different boards as I explained how to do. I decided which board I was going to go for. I did Edexcel, I think. I did Edexcel International because I was not in the UK. And I booked the exam with the British Council. They have centres where you sit the exam. And I basically opened the specification, I think it's called. So the specification is basically a booklet that tells you what are the exams you sit. And sometimes you have options. They're like, you could sit 1A or 1B. And these are the differences. So you have to, decide which papers you want to sit. Sometimes you have a choice. So I looked at the specification to see what papers there are and what is required in each paper. So they break it down. They say question 1 takes up 30% of the marks, and usually it will be a question related to this, and we expect this from the answer. And then they also tell you what grammar points need to be covered. So that's very useful in terms of just knowing what level you need to be at, and that you can do yourself. Just look at the grammar, what I would do for Arabic is I would look at the different grammar points I need to know. Go to YouTube. Okay, I need to know mamnu' min as-sarf. I just search up mamnu' min as-sarf, understand it, and then just that's it. Move on to the next topic. So there's no book that I could follow. So I was just doing it based on the specification. I actually did the same thing for maths A level the second time around that I did it. So the first time I did it at I was age 13, I think.
13.
I got a B. So I did it again, aged 17, and got an A star. And the second time I did it, obviously I had forgotten everything. I think we still had the textbooks, but they weren't the right textbooks. So I started learning with the textbooks, but then I was like, oh, what if I'm missing some subjects that are actually in the A levels, So what I did, I just went straight to the specification for A levels, and I saw every single topic in detail that I needed to learn. So I was like, and this is what, when they make a textbook, this is what they're looking at. They just look at the specification. What does the specification say? And it says in detail, they need to know integrals. They need to know how to integrate this, this, and this. They do not know how to integrate this, this, and this. And then I just did it from that. I just saw, okay, integrals, searched up on YouTube, integration, learned it until the point where they said I needed to know, and then stopped. And I did it directly from the specification. At some point, I just gave up with the books because I was like, I can just go to the specification myself. So I did that for maths, and I did that for Arabic. And for Arabic, I basically just, the thing with Arabic, it's a language. You have to just be good at the language to do the A-level. So I just started learning the language. I started reading things in Arabic. I started writing in Arabic. And for this, I needed tutoring. I needed more tutoring because you can't mark your own things. So I would have 2 tutors because they were both busy. So they both couldn't do a lot of hours. I think I had 1 or 2 hours a week with both of them. So in total, max 4 hours of tutoring per week. Well, it was 1 hour with each, but then I think I paid an extra hour to get them to mark the things, and then in the call we would discuss something like that. So it ended up being 3-4 hours a week of tutoring. It was very expensive because they were both qualified to do the A level. They knew how to mark according to the A level.
One was a
former examiner for the A level. It was very expensive, but you don't need that if you can't afford it, because they are very expensive if they're former.
They're not that expensive. I mean, how much are they?
£50 an hour.
Okay,
that's expensive.
Right.
So, or 40 to £50 an hour. So that's very expensive. You can probably find if people have done the A level, that would be good as well, even if they haven't actually been an examiner in it. Just you can pay whatever according to what you can, even if it's just someone who speaks the language, just tell them to correct. They can't give a mark. They can't say, okay, this is this out of this, but at least they can correct it, right? So they can say this is wrong, this is right, whatever. And then, that's pretty much it. I would just listen to videos in Arabic. I would just look up. One thing I did a lot of was I read the news in Arabic. And I just look up. I would switch between the English and the Arabic version. On BBC Arabic has a feature where you can switch from English to Arabic and auto-translate. So I just did tons of that. There was nothing, reading BBC Arabic is not in the syllabus of the A-level. That's just me saying okay, I looked at the papers. I looked at, for example, the translation of English to Arabic. I knew what level of Arabic I had to be at, right? So for example, in the translation, I remember there was one translation which had the word falcon in it. And I was like, okay, so my Arabic needs to be pretty good then, because I need to know words like falcon. So that's how I'm figuring it out, because I had no idea what my Arabic actually had to be, what level it had to be at. That's basically it. You're just looking at the past papers, you're looking at the specification, and you're figuring out from that, what do you need to do? And it sounds difficult, but it's not. Once you get used to it, you kind of know what to do. I think that's it. I've given the 2 kind of ends of the range of subjects. So things in the middle, for example, biology, probably history. I've never done history, but something like history is there are books, most likely. But then when you're marking, it's a little bit difficult to know, is this right or wrong? For biology, you kind of write essays sometimes. So those ones you would do a kind of a mix of the 2. I think that's more or less. I don't know. I might be leaving something out. But
you probably are. But I mean, that's brilliant. Thanks very, very much. So I just thought I'd just put a little reminder here that I really think I don't know if you agree with me, but I think one of the most important things is parental involvement, as it were, and that's very, very important. And I think another thing is that I think, look, if you're sitting here thinking, oh gosh, Mariam must be so intelligent, and Danielle and Sabine, and if you're kind of like of that view and you think, okay, wow, there's no way my kids could do it, I think you've already lost half the battle. I really genuinely think that. I mean, I think, for example, Daniel in particular, he's good, really good at certain subjects and bad at other subjects. But I don't think that stops him from doing any of the subjects. Like, he can do. I mean, we all of us know that if we want to put our minds to it, we can do anything. And look, I think there's some really. I think most kids can achieve fairly similar results. Not maybe not the same results, maybe even better results, but most kids can achieve, like, you did your A-level physics, for example. No, you did your physics A-level in 5 months. Yep. I mean, if she could do it, I mean, she's not good at physics. She really dislikes it. If she can do it in 5 months, I'm telling you, most kids can probably do it in 5 months, actually. And if they can't do it in 5 months, they can do it in 6-7 months. And that's when you were 13. So I think it's really important. I think one of the most important things is you have to believe that all of this is really easy. I really think it's easy. And that's why when people are asking me, how do you do this? How do you do that? And, can my kids do it? And I'm like, no, I mean, it's like, yes, your kids probably can do it. And, there's no set routine we can give you. Got anything else to add, Mariam?
Yeah, there's one thing about motivating children.
Good
When
one, yeah.
they're, this is going to be a little bit like, it's a bit of like practical advice. When they're younger and you kind of need to take more charge of what they're doing, and you probably need to be giving them every day or every week certain work that they have to do. For example, you have to reach this grade in Khan Academy by this time, so give them more broken down goals. So because when I did my Arabic A-level, my only goal was do the A-level, and that was from me, because at that point I really know what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do in life. I was really motivated, and I was
Well, you think
an
you know
adult.
what you wanted to do in life.
I know what I wanted to do.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
Because I want means like I wanted
Or
to.
you thought you knew what you wanted to do in life.
No, but
okay,
at that point I knew what I
time.
wanted.
Okay, go on.
I knew what I wanted at
Okay.
that time.
All right, okay.
Okay, I haven't been proven wrong yet. I still want to do the same things. But anyway, So, and I was an adult. I was 18. So when I took over the A-level completely, that was with those like things in place, with being completely motivated by myself, which I wasn't before, by the way. I needed a lot more help from my parents before, and being completely an adult, 18 years old. So when they're younger, there needs to be more of you pushing them, a lot more. And when they're really young, like let's say an 8-year-old doing a GCSE, they need to have daily goals, aside from knowing, okay, you're doing the GCSE, this is why you're doing it, we want to be done with your education by this age, after that you can do whatever you want, etc. Aside from all those long-term stuff, they need to have daily or weekly goals. And also, just like the way that my mom would do this, very practical. We would have, she's quite strict, like not like overly strict, but she would be able to tell us do something and we would do it, because we just know you have to listen to your mother. Like she was that kind of like, it wasn't hard for her to make us work. But also on the days where we were just misbehaving and refusing to work, we had like things where it's like, okay, if you don't do this, you can't watch your movie. Like we had a movie every Saturday. You can't watch your Saturday movie. You can't eat dessert today after dinner. We'd have like a small dessert we can eat. Just things like that works. Like you can do that for daily, or
For young
weekly
kids.
goals. Yeah, for very young kids. And then as they get older, just see like what works for motivating them and getting them to work, how much you can take over and how much you can leave them to do on their own.
But older kids are a lot. I mean, post once you go past 13ish,
they can do everything themselves essentially.
no, they can do everything themselves, but they're
If
not
they're
easy to motivate.
motivated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not.
It's not easy
the
to
challenge
motivate them.
then becomes motivating them. That's the
Yeah.
real challenge, and that's where you've really got to lay things out and make them understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And they won't listen to you. Essentially, you cannot make a 14, 15-year-old study. It has to come from within.
Yeah.
You got anything further to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.